Dead Space Remake, a game that completely revitalized a classic survival horror experience and honestly deserved a shot at Game of the Year. The original Dead Space was already a masterpiece, but the remake took it to another level, with modern graphics, tighter gameplay, and some amazing quality-of-life improvements. It was like stepping back into a nightmare, but with 4K visuals, and even more horrifying details. First off, the atmosphere in the Dead Space remake was next level. The USG Ishimura felt more alive, and dead, than ever. Every creak, every shadow, and every flickering light just added to that sense of dread. The developers did an incredible job preserving what made the original so terrifying, while also cranking up the immersion. They rebuilt the whole game from the ground up, and it showed in how polished the environments were. The lighting alone made certain sections feel way scarier than before, like you're always one step away from something terrible. But here's the thing. While the Dead Space remake was stunning and faithful to its source material, some people argued that it didn't do enough to push the genre forward, which is probably why it didn't take home the Game of the Year trophy. It was a fantastic remake, but it stayed close to the original's formula, which, for some, felt more like a tribute than a bold new experience. But here's the bottom line. The Dead Space remake did exactly what it set out to do, remind us why this franchise is one of the best in survival horror. The fact that it didn't win Game of the Year doesn't take away from the fact that it was one of the most polished and terrifying games of 2023. RYSE Son of Rome. You know, when I first fired up RYSE, I wasn't entirely sure what to expect. I'd heard mixed things over the years, but it really surprised me in a lot of good ways. Right from the start, the visuals pulled me in. I mean, this game is stunning. The world of ancient Rome looks so alive, from the grand architecture to the battlefields dripping with atmosphere. It's one of those games where you can just stop and admire the scenery. But RYSE isn't just about looking pretty. The combat, while simple, is incredibly satisfying. Yeah, it's not the most complex system out there, but once you get into the rhythm of sword swings, dodges, and finishing moves, it feels epic. There's a real sense of power behind each blow, and the slow-motion finishers, pure cinematic brilliance. It made me feel like a gladiator, right in the thick of battle. The story, too, deserves some praise. Marius Titus, the game's protagonist, has a journey that's as much about personal revenge as it is about the fate of Rome itself. The way the narrative unfolds keeps you invested. And let's not forget the voice acting. It's top-notch, really bringing the characters and drama to life. One of the coolest things about RYSE is how it captures the brutal reality of Roman warfare. You can tell the developers paid attention to detail, especially in the way soldiers fought, and how battles were choreographed. There's something genuinely immersive about leading your troops through a formation, calling out orders, and fighting alongside them. The Surge 2. I feel like it doesn't get enough credit, but I had such a good time with it. If you're into that whole Souls-like experience, but with a sci-fi twist, this game is exactly what you need. It takes that punishing, tactical combat formula and throws it into this futuristic, dystopian world, which is a super cool setting for this kind of gameplay. The thing that really hooked me was the combat. It's brutal, but in the best way. You're not just hacking and slashing mindlessly. You actually have to target specific limbs, which adds a whole new layer of strategy. I loved figuring out which part of an enemy I wanted to focus on. Do I go for the unarmored areas for an easy kill, or do I try to chop off a limb to get some sweet gear? Every fight felt like a puzzle, and I never got tired of that. Jericho City has this gritty industrial feel to it. The world building is solid. There's this mix of high-tech and complete chaos, and as you explore, you find out more about what went wrong in this messed-up future. The city itself is pretty open, with tons of shortcuts and hidden paths, which made exploring feel rewarding. Plus, the verticality of the levels was cool. You're not just walking through corridors. You're jumping, climbing, and finding secret areas that connect back in smart ways. It had that same feeling as Dark Souls, in how the world loops back on itself. The story is pretty interesting too. You're kind of dropped into this mess without much context, and as you play, you slowly piece together what happened in Jericho City. The Evil Within, a game that brought some real old-school survival horror vibes, but didn't quite get the love it deserved. Honestly, this game flew under the radar for a lot of people, which is crazy because it was directed by Shinji Mikami, the guy behind Resident Evil 4. You'd think that would have guaranteed a Game of the Year contender, right? What made The Evil Within stand out was how it balanced psychological horror with intense, sometimes brutal action. The game wasn't just about jump scares, though it had plenty of those. It was about atmosphere, tension, and always keeping the player on edge. You never felt safe, which is what survival horror should be all about. And the world? Creepy, unsettling, filled with twisted, nightmarish creatures. It really felt like a descent into madness. But let's be real. The evil within wasn't for everyone, and that's probably why it didn't snag a Game of the Year. The difficulty was punishing at times, with limited ammo, tough enemies, and the kind of survival mechanics that could frustrate players who weren't prepared for that hardcore experience. It had this real old-school design that some players loved, but others found off-putting. People who were used to more action-focused horror games weren't always vibing with the slower, more methodical pace. The game was also pretty divisive when it came to its story. Some people thought the plot was all over the place, a little too cryptic and hard to follow, but here's the thing. If you were a fan of old-school survival horror, The Evil Within was a gem. Gears 5. Even if you're new to the Gears series, trust me, Gears 5 is an amazing place to jump in. It's got everything you'd want in a blockbuster game, great characters, intense firefights, and a world that's equal parts beautiful and brutal. The combat in Gears 5 feels incredibly smooth, and every gunfight has that intense, cover-based strategy that makes Gears so satisfying. Popping out from cover, landing that perfect headshot, or getting up close and personal with the Lancer's chainsaw never gets old. There's something just downright satisfying about how combat feels here. Each weapon has a unique kick to it, so you're never just mindlessly firing away. It's all about timing and positioning. Plus, with the addition of Jack, your handy little drone buddy, you get some new abilities that mix things up in fun ways. He can cloak you, zap enemies, and even fetch items, so he's a true lifesaver in tight spots. And let's take a second to appreciate the world. Gears 5 introduces these open-world sections where you can explore on this sweet vehicle called the Skiff. Just zipping across the snowy tundra or the desert sands is a vibe all on its own. The world feels alive and dynamic, with lots of cool, hidden places to discover. It's not exactly a fully open world, but it's enough to let you roam around and soak in the atmosphere, and it really breaks up the action nicely. You're not just going from one big fight to the next. You actually have time to breathe, explore, and take in some amazing views. The story here actually has some serious depth. CUPHEAD. It's a game that doesn't hold your hand. Instead, it hands you a pair of gloves and says, "All right, let's see what you've got." So, what's the deal with CUPHEAD? Well, it's all about boss battles. Big, bold, over-the-top showdowns that'll push your skills to the limit. Each encounter is completely unique, filled with crazy attacks, patterns you have to learn, and that sweet moment of triumph when you finally get it right. And trust me, those victories feel earned. This game doesn't hand them out like candy. The gameplay is fast, precise, and oh so satisfying. You'll be dodging, jumping, and shooting your way through a series of increasingly difficult fights, all while trying to keep track of what's happening on screen. And there's a lot happening on screen. But that's part of the fun. It's all about staying focused, learning the patterns, and figuring out how to outsmart each boss. One thing that really stands out is the variety. You're not just fighting the same type of boss over and over again. Each one feels like its own mini-event, with unique designs and attacks that keep you on your toes. One minute, you're dodging projectiles in a traditional platforming setup, and the next, you're flying through the air in a shoot-'em-up. It's this constant change of pace that keeps the game so engaging. And let's not forget about the co-op mode. Playing with a friend adds a whole new dynamic to the chaos, as you both work together to take down these larger-than-life foes. It's teamwork at its most frantic and fun. Red Dead Redemption 2, a game that absolutely dominated conversations when it came out, but somehow didn't win Game of the Year. And I get it, God of War was a beast in 2018. But let's be honest, Red Dead Redemption 2 was something else. This was a game that didn't just tell a story, it lived and breathed one. The world Rockstar created in Red Dead Redemption 2 was so immersive, it felt like the Old West was right there in front of you. And the detail? Insane. You could spend hours just wandering around, hunting, fishing, getting into random encounters. And every part of it felt like it was happening in real time. Rockstar nailed the atmosphere, from the dynamic weather to how towns felt alive. Even your horse had personality. People get so attached to their horses like it's a real companion. Now, the story is where the game really shines. Arthur Morgan? easily one of the most complex, well-written characters in gaming. His whole journey of redemption, loyalty, and questioning his place in the gang gave players an emotional roller coaster. The game nailed that perfect blend of realism and fun. The way the world reacts to your choices, whether you're being honorable or wreaking havoc, makes every playthrough feel personal and unique. In the end, Red Dead Redemption 2 deserved all the praise and then some. It was more than just a game. It was an experience. The fact that it didn't win Game of the Year is still something people talk about because it left such a lasting impact. Dark Souls Remastered. This game is an undeniable classic, rebuilt to remind players why it's become a benchmark for challenging, rewarding gameplay. It throws you into a grim and mysterious world where every encounter, every decision, and every step feels meaningful. This isn't just a game you play, it's a test of patience, skill, and determination. Combat is at the core of Dark Souls Remastered, and it's an art form here. It's all about timing, precision, and understanding your enemies. Every swing of a sword, every block with your shield, and every dodge roll feels deliberate. The game doesn't hand you easy wins. Instead, it challenges you to learn its rhythms and grow as a player. Defeating an enemy after a tough battle feels like a genuine accomplishment, and that sense of achievement never fades, no matter how many times you experience it. Exploration is another highlight. The interconnected world is full of hidden paths, shortcuts, and secrets that reward players who pay attention to their surroundings. It's not a linear journey, and you're encouraged to venture off the beaten path. Whether you're descending into a dark and eerie cave or ascending a crumbling tower, every area feels distinct and filled with its own challenges. The game's upgrade system is as deep as the world itself. It gives you the freedom to shape your character into the fighter you want to be. Whether you prefer to wield massive swords, master powerful spells, or outmaneuver your enemies with light weapons. Titanfall 2. If you haven't jumped into this game yet, you're in for a treat because it's one of those rare shooters that nails everything from movement to story. You're not just running and gunning here. Titanfall 2 turns you into a parkour expert with wall running, double jumping, and slides that let you weave through the battlefield like a pro. The controls are smooth, and once you get the hang of it, it's hard to go back to other games. The map designs are built around this movement too, encouraging you to think creatively about how to get from point A to point B. There's something so satisfying about stringing together a perfect series of moves to outmaneuver enemies, and every match feels like you're pulling off action movie stunts. And then there are the Titans. If you ever wanted to pilot a giant mech, Titanfall 2 makes that dream come true. The game balances your time between playing as a pilot, the fast, agile soldier, and then calling down your Titan, which adds this completely new layer to the gameplay. Titans are powerful, heavy-hitting, and give you this awesome sense of being a walking tank. But it's not just a button mash fest. Every Titan has unique abilities and weapons, so there's actually a good bit of strategy involved. One thing that really stands out in Titanfall 2 is the campaign. Now, I know campaigns in first-person shooters can sometimes feel like a warm-up for multiplayer, but here it's a full experience on its own. It's well-paced, exciting, and even throws in some surprises that keep things fresh. Resident Evil 5. Now, Resident Evil 5 does things a little differently than some of the other games in the series. It's not about creeping down dark hallways or fighting off sudden jump scares every 2 seconds. This one leans way more into action, and let me tell you, it does that action really well. One of the things that makes Resident Evil 5 stand out is its co-op gameplay. If you've got a friend to play with, this game is seriously a blast. You and your partner are constantly working together, covering each other's backs, sharing resources, strategizing against big enemies. And trust me, it makes the entire experience so much better. Whether you're playing as Chris Redfield or Shiva Alomar, you're both crucial to the fight. And that dynamic is what makes this game feel so fresh in the Resident Evil lineup. I remember the first time I played with a friend. We were yelling at each other, trying to stay alive, and it was chaos in the best possible way. Now combat here is amped up, and Resident Evil 5 fully commits to that action-packed style. You're fighting waves of infected, managing your ammo, using different weapons, and some of the encounters feel big and intense. I'm talking heart-pounding moments where you're surrounded, low on ammo, and desperately strategizing to make it out alive. The game's got this great mix of survival horror and all-out action that makes every fight feel like a scene straight out of a movie. But even if you're going solo, the AI partner, Shiva, if you're Chris, actually does a pretty solid job. Horizon Forbidden West. If you enjoyed Horizon Zero Dawn, or just love the idea of exploring a stunning post-apocalyptic world with robotic creatures, this game is everything. It takes what made the first game so special and cranks it up even further. First off, the world is absolutely breathtaking. We're talking lush forests, sweeping deserts, misty mountains, and mysterious ruins, all packed with color and life. Every time you step into a new area, it feels like you're on an epic journey, and you can just feel the love that went into designing this world. It's one of those games where you'll find yourself stopping just to admire the views. The combat is even more intense than before. You're still going up against these awesome robotic creatures, but this time, there's a lot more variety in how you can approach each encounter. You can try different strategies, depending on the creature type, use traps, experiment with elemental effects, or even override certain machines to turn them into allies. It makes every fight feel unique, especially since the machines have such varied designs and behaviors. Oh, and the underwater sections? They're gorgeous, and actually add a whole new layer to the game. Now, diving into lakes and exploring submerged ruins is part of the adventure, and it's so well done. It makes the world feel even bigger and more dynamic, because you're not just stuck on land anymore. Horizon Forbidden West is a perfect mix of action, exploration, and storytelling. It's one of those games where you can spend hours just getting lost in side quests and exploring. Ghost Recon Wildlands. It's one of those games that kinda slipped under the radar for a lot of people, but honestly, it's so much fun once you get into it. I mean, the sheer scale of the open world is wild. Bolivia is your playground, and you can literally go anywhere. I remember the first time I jumped in a helicopter and just flew over this huge mountain range, seeing the sprawling landscape below. It's kind of breathtaking, even for an older game. The thing that really stands out, though, is how flexible the gameplay is. You've got this whole squad with you, and you can approach missions in so many different ways. If you're feeling tactical, you can scout out an area with your drone, mark enemies, and silently pick them off one by one. Or you can just go in guns blazing and let the chaos unfold. And I love that both options work. There's no one way to play it. And man, playing co-op with friends, that's where it gets really fun. There's nothing quite like coordinating an attack with your buddies, where everyone's got their role. One person's sniping, another's on the ground sneaking in, and then you're calling in air support. It just makes you feel like a real squad. Of course, it doesn't always go according to plan, and when everything falls apart, it turns into this hilarious mess of trying to escape or salvage the mission. But that's part of the charm, right? I also appreciate how the game doesn't take itself too seriously. Sure, it's got this gritty cartel storyline, but the characters crack jokes, and there are these moments of levity that break up the intensity. The only downside? I guess some missions can get a bit repetitive if you're playing solo for too long. The Callisto Protocol. It's from Glenn Schofield, one of the co-creators of Dead Space, so if you know that series, you can expect a similar intensity here, with a unique twist that keeps things fresh. One of the things I love about this game is how it creates tension. It's not just jump scares, though there are a few really effective ones. It's that constant feeling of dread. You're almost always low on ammo and health, so every encounter with the twisted, mutated inmates of this prison feels like a struggle to survive. The combat is brutal and up close, forcing you to really get in there and make every swing count. It's not your typical action game where you can just spray bullets and move on. Here, you're scraping by with whatever resources you can find, and it adds so much to the immersion and intensity. The combat is visceral. There's this raw, almost primal feel to it. The melee system in particular is pretty unique for a horror game. You actually have to get in close to bash these creatures, and it's terrifying in the best way. You're not just standing back with a gun. You're practically fighting for your life in every encounter, which makes the experience that much more intense. What really stands out, though, is how the game creates this balance between horror and sci-fi mystery. Sure, you're dealing with terrifying creatures and survival, but there's also this big, intriguing story underneath it all. Why did everything go wrong on Callisto? What's causing these transformations? The game does a great job of feeding you bits and pieces of the narrative as you go. Doom 4. This game brought back the old-school shooter in the best way possible, but still didn't take home the Game of the Year award. And I'm still scratching my head over that, because Doom was an absolute beast when it dropped. It was like ID Software said, let's show everyone how a real first-person shooter is done. First of all, Doom nailed the pacing. It was fast, chaotic, and brutal. Everything you want in a Doom game. They took that classic run-and-gun formula and cranked it up to 11. You're constantly moving, jumping, and tearing through demons like a one-man wrecking crew. The combat was a symphony of destruction, where stopping meant death. And let's not forget the glory kills, where you get rewarded for ripping apart demons up close in the most satisfying ways possible. The thing that made Doom stand out was how unapologetically old school it was. No cover mechanics, no reloading, just pure adrenaline-fueled action. It felt like a return to form for the genre. And in a sea of shooters that were leaning more toward tactical, slow-paced gameplay, Doom was like a wake-up call. It reminded everyone why the original Doom was such a phenomenon back in the day. Why it didn't win Game of the Year. One reason could be that it released in a pretty stacked year. 2016 had Overwatch taking a lot of the spotlight, and multiplayer shooters were all the rage. Doom, on the other hand, was a more solo-focused experience. Sure, it had a multiplayer mode, but that's not what people played it for. Baldur's Gate 3. If you're into RPGs or Dungeons & Dragons, this is basically a dream come true. The thing is, it's not just the story. It's the choices you make, the characters you meet, the dice rolls that can completely change how a situation unfolds. Every playthrough feels different, and I love that about it. First off, let's talk about the freedom this game gives you. You can literally do anything. Want to sneak past enemies instead of fighting them? Go for it. Want to convince a dragon to let you pass with just a bit of clever dialogue? Roll those dice. Or if you're feeling chaotic, you can just, blow stuff up with magic and hope for the best. That freedom makes every encounter feel fresh, and it's not just about combat. Your decisions can have lasting consequences on the story, on your companions, and even on the world itself. The story itself is wild. You start off with this mind flayer parasite in your brain, which immediately sets the stakes super high. And as you try to find a cure, you uncover all these other crazy plots and factions vying for control. It's dark, it's epic, and the world is full of so many cool little stories and side quests that it's easy to get lost in it all. The best part? You can shape the story in so many different ways, whether you want to be a hero, a villain, or something in between. The game doesn't force you down one path. It really feels like your journey. It's got that perfect blend of story, character development, and strategic combat, all wrapped up in this beautiful, sprawling world. Shadow of the Tomb Raider. For some reason, it didn't get the love it deserved when it first came out. I mean, Lara Croft is a gaming icon, and the rebooted trilogy had been going strong, but when Shadow of the Tomb Raider dropped, kind of flew under the radar for a lot of people. But honestly, this game is way better than its reputation suggests. Well, a lot of it came down to timing. Shadow of the Tomb Raider launched during a crowded time, with some big AAA games releasing around the same period, so it got overshadowed. Plus, some critics said it didn't do enough to innovate from the previous two games. People expected something groundbreaking after Rise of the Tomb Raider, but instead, they got a game that felt more like an evolution than a revolution. But here's the thing, what's so bad about sticking to a formula that works? The story, for example, is actually pretty deep. And let's not forget the world building. Shadow of the Tomb Raider has some of the most beautiful environments in the entire series. From dense jungles to hidden tombs, the game is visually stunning. The tombs themselves are more complex and rewarding than before, with some really creative puzzles that feel satisfying to solve. If you love the exploration and puzzle-solving aspects of Tomb Raider, this game nails it. Combat also feels more refined. Sure, it's not the focus as much as it was in the earlier reboot games, but that actually works in the game's favor. Shadow of the Tomb Raider encourages stealth and strategy over pure action, which fits the tone of the game. Dragon's Dogma 2. After playing this game, I have to say it really exceeded my expectations. I mean, I was excited going in, sure, but once I actually got my hands on it, I realized just how much Capcom stepped up their game. Everything feels bigger, better, and more immersive than the first one. First off, the world is massive. I remember just wandering around for hours, not even on a quest, just exploring. The sense of adventure is so strong here. Every corner of the map feels like it has something interesting to uncover. Whether it's a hidden cave, a random group of enemies, or just a breathtaking view, you always feel like you're discovering something new. The combat, though, that's where the game shines. It's fast, fluid, and really customizable. I spent so much time tweaking my character's build, trying out different classes. One moment I was a nimble strider, darting around enemies, and the next I was a towering warrior smashing through everything. Every fight feels dynamic, especially with the new monster encounters. Those big hulking creatures, they're no joke. Climbing onto their backs mid-fight is such a rush. But what I loved most was the pawn system. They've really refined it. My pawn wasn't just a sidekick, they were essential. I grew so attached to them, seeing how they adapted to my playstyle. Sometimes I felt like they were learning faster than I was. It's cool to see your pawn in someone else's game too. I got some great items because other players were borrowing mine and leveling them up. Far Cry 6. This is a game that knows exactly what it's doing, dropping you into a chaotic, sprawling open world filled with action, surprises, and an arsenal of wild tools to turn the odds in your favor. If you've ever wanted to feel like an unstoppable force while exploring an island paradise that's teetering on the edge of revolution, this game is your playground. The first thing that hits you about Far Cry 6 is how alive Yara feels. It's not just a setting. It's a vibrant, untamed world full of things waiting to explode, both literally and figuratively. Every road, village, jungle, and coastline feels like it's daring you to take charge. You'll find yourself tearing through enemy checkpoints, sneaking through lush forests, and stumbling into random, often hilarious encounters. There's a level of unpredictability to every corner of the island that keeps you constantly engaged. The game doesn't just give you a bunch of weapons and tell you to go wild. It gives you the tools to turn Yara into your personal chaos sandbox. Guns? Sure, but why stop there? There are makeshift weapons that look like they were cobbled together by a genius with a garage full of junk. Flamethrowers, disc launchers, explosive gadgets. Each one feels like it was designed to make you cackle, while causing maximum destruction. Vehicles are a big part of the fun too. From patched-up trucks to sleek motorcycles, you're never far from something that gets your adrenaline pumping. And it doesn't stop at traditional rides. Wolfenstein, Youngblood. It's a bold step into a new chapter, where you step into the boots of Jess and Soph Blazkowicz, twin daughters of the legendary B.J. Blazkowicz, as they carve their own bloody path through a Nazi-controlled Paris in the 1980s. The heart of the game lies in its co-op mechanics. It's built for teamwork, and the dynamic between the two sisters translates seamlessly into gameplay. Whether you're playing with a friend or teaming up with an AI partner, every encounter feels like a high-energy tag team of destruction. Coordinating attacks, sharing resources, and revving each other up with pep signals makes every fight feel alive and engaging. The gunplay is classic Wolfenstein, fast, punchy, and packed with variety. From the satisfying kick of a shotgun to the futuristic zap of a laser gun, there's a weapon for every playstyle. Upgrading your arsenal adds a layer of customization that lets you tailor your tools of destruction to your liking. It's not just about shooting, it's about shooting with style, precision, and that signature over-the-top flair. The structure of the game feels different in the best way possible. It's more open-ended, encouraging exploration, and giving you the freedom to tackle objectives in your own order. Paris isn't just a backdrop. It's a sprawling playground filled with hidden paths, enemy outposts, and countless opportunities to experiment with your approach. It's all about finding your rhythm, whether you're charging in guns blazing or sneaking around. Final Fantasy XVI. I wasn't sure what to expect going in because the series has gone through so many different styles, but this one really grabbed me right away. First off, the story got this darker, more mature vibe compared to some of the other Final Fantasy games. I love how it dives deep into political drama, with all these nations fighting over the power of the Icons. It feels like you're watching this epic medieval fantasy unfold. And speaking of Icons, man, those battles are insane. You've got these massive cinematic showdowns between these godlike creatures. The scale of it all is just jaw-dropping. Plus, the real-time combat system. It's smooth, it's fast, and it's so satisfying when you pull off these combos and juggle enemies mid-air. I think that shift away from the turn-based combat really helps the game feel fresh, you know? Now, the world of Valisthea is stunning. Everywhere you go, the landscapes just pull you in. From vast deserts to lush forests, it's one of those worlds that begs to be explored. I found myself constantly stopping to just take in the view. The towns and cities feel lived into each. One has its own vibe, and I loved talking to NPCs and learning more about the world's lore. Plus, the side quests, they actually have depth. It's not just go fetch this or kill that, but instead, they give you more context about the world and characters, which I always appreciate. I think the only thing that threw me off at first was how different it feels from classic Final Fantasy games. Outer Wilds. This game is all about exploring the unknown, and it really leans into that feeling of pure discovery. You're a new astronaut, part of this tiny space program from a small, cozy alien race, and you're launched out into space with nothing but your ship and a lot of questions. And I mean a lot of questions. What's so cool about Outer Wilds is that it doesn't handhold or push you in any specific direction. You have this whole solar system to explore, and every single planet is like its own character. Each place is unique, with strange environments, hidden stories, and mysteries that just pull you in. You land somewhere, start exploring, and immediately find yourself getting wrapped up in something unexpected. The sense of wonder in this game is unreal. I mean, you'll be cruising along and suddenly you're uncovering secrets that are far bigger than you'd expect. There's something magical about wandering into these ancient ruins or discovering strange technologies from a long-lost civilization. And as you piece things together, you start to understand that every single mystery is connected, which is honestly so satisfying. One of my favorite things is how much Outer Wilds makes you feel like a real explorer. There's no combat or big flashy objectives. It's all about curiosity. Every time you figure something out, it feels like a little victory, and the game respects that you're smart enough to connect the dots on your own. Another thing is the time loop. It's such a unique mechanic that gives the game this sense of urgency, but without being punishing. Disco Elysium. This isn't your typical video game. There are no epic boss fights, no laser shooting guns, and no saving the world from a galaxy-ending threat. What you get instead is a deeply personal, weirdly hilarious, and sometimes emotional journey that sticks with you long after the credits roll. The premise is simple. You wake up as a detective with the world's worst hangover and zero memory of who you are or what you're supposed to be doing. Oh, and there's a murder to solve. But trust me, it's so much more than just a crime story. This is a game about choices, messy, chaotic, and completely human choices. And the best part, it never judges you for them. In most games, failing means you reload your last save and try again. Not here. In Disco Elysium, failing is just another part of the story. Maybe you'll bungle an interrogation, or maybe your attempt at a dramatic speech will turn into an awkward disaster. Either way, the game rolls with it, and often, the failures lead to some of the funniest or most touching moments. The way the game handles morality and themes is another standout. It's not about being a good or bad detective. It's about being your detective. You can play as a bumbling fool, a philosophical genius, or even a complete mess of contradictions. And the game never forces you into a box. It's about exploring who you are in this broken world. And trust me, some of the outcomes from your choices are hilarious. If you're up for a journey that's more about the questions than the answers, give this game a shot. Silent Hill 2 Remake. I've got to say, it totally nails that eerie, unsettling vibe that made the original such a classic. I mean, Silent Hill 2 is already one of the most iconic horror games out there, but this remake, it's like they took all the stuff that creeped us out back in the day and cranked it up with these incredible graphics and sound design. The foggy town of Silent Hill looks absolutely gorgeous in this remake. Well, in a terrifying, twisted way, of course. The way the fog moves, the way the shadows creep along the streets, it's so atmospheric. Walking through those empty, run-down streets, you can just feel the tension building. I caught myself hesitating before turning corners, just bracing for whatever nightmare was waiting around the bend. The monsters are just insane. Pyramid Head is back, and just as horrifying as ever. Seeing him in high definition? Yeah, it gave me chills. And the sound design makes it even worse. In the best way. You'll hear these distant, unsettling noises, and it just puts you on edge the entire time. The sound of the radio static kicking in right before a monster appears still gets me every time. What I also love is how faithful the remake is to the original, but it also adds some nice quality of life improvements. The controls feel smoother. The combat is a little more refined, but it still keeps that you're not some action hero vibe. Every encounter with a monster feels dangerous, like you're barely scraping by, which is exactly what you want in a horror game like this. If you're into survival horror at all, or if you loved the original, you've got to check this out. Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora. Now, I know a lot of us have waited years to see more of Pandora since the original Avatar movie. Whether you loved it for its visuals, the unique world, or just getting lost in this strange, immersive place, well, here's the perfect excuse to dive back in and actually be in Pandora, not just watching it on a screen. The cool thing is, you're not just wandering around as a tourist. This is your home, and as you're exploring, you get this real sense of belonging. The way they've crafted the interactions with the world and other Na'vi characters just pulls you into the story. It's personal and really touches on that classic theme of connecting to nature, but on a whole new level. Combat-wise, it's balanced in a way that makes you feel powerful, yet still in tune with the environment. The Na'vi weaponry isn't just about brute force. It's more graceful, blending seamlessly with nature. It's not like you're there to destroy, but rather defend and protect, which gives a nice sense of purpose to every fight. And honestly, if you're into exploration, you're going to have a blast. Pandora's open-world setup lets you go off the main path, uncovering hidden spots that tell little stories of their own. It's the kind of game where you don't mind getting lost, because there's always something breathtaking to discover. So yeah, if you're looking for a game that's both visually stunning and has depth, give this one a shot. It's the kind of experience that'll stick with you long after you've turned off the console. No Man's Sky, one of the most controversial video game redemption stories out there. When this game first launched, it got slammed hard, like really hard. People were furious because they felt like they were promised the universe, literally, and what they got didn't live up to all the hype. You know how it is when a game gets hyped beyond belief, right? Expectations just go through the roof. The biggest issues at launch were things like missing features, limited multiplayer options, and overall a lack of the promised living, breathing universe that players thought they'd get. It was a huge deal at the time. Everyone was like, where are the massive space battles? Where's all the depth? Players felt misled, and it led to some pretty angry reviews. No Man's Sky became the poster child for overpromised and underdelivered games. But here's the crazy part. Instead of throwing in the towel, the developers at Hello Games just kept working on it. They didn't give up. And over time, they transformed the game into something truly special. Seriously, the updates have been absolutely massive. They kept adding the features players were hoping for, like base building, expanded multiplayer, better exploration mechanics, and more dynamic planets. Now, it's packed with content, and it's a totally different experience from what people saw at launch. It's honestly one of the most positive turnarounds in gaming. It went from being the game everyone loved to hate, to becoming a beloved space exploration game with a really dedicated fanbase. Marvel's Spider-Man 2. If you loved the first two games, get ready to have your mind blown, because this sequel takes everything up a notch. It's got all the web-swinging, action-packed, open-world goodness from the first game, but with some seriously awesome upgrades that make you feel even more like Spidey. First off, swinging through New York again? Man, I could do that for hours. The way they've refined the web-swinging mechanics is just so smooth. You're gliding through the city, flipping between skyscrapers, and pulling off crazy mid-air tricks. There's this new web glider thing that lets you cover so much ground so fast. It's like Spidey's flying, and it's the best feeling when you're cruising over Central Park or zipping through tight alleyways. It makes you feel unstoppable, and you'll never want to use fast travel. And this time, you get to switch between Peter and Miles, which is a game changer. Both of them have their own fighting styles and unique abilities, so it never feels repetitive. Peter's got his classic gadgets, but now he's also rocking those symbiote powers that just feel brutal. You can really feel the strength when he's using them. It's like he's just tearing through enemies. And then you've got Miles, who's all about that flashy Venom energy. I loved how you could seamlessly switch between them, depending on the mission or just how you wanted to play. The combat, too, has been seriously upgraded. It's fast, fluid, and makes you feel like you're choreographing these epic battles. Persona 5 Royal. Imagine a mix of an anime-inspired high school life simulator, a classic RPG, and a supernatural heist adventure. And somehow, this game pulls it all off beautifully. What makes Persona 5 Royal special is its ability to balance two very different worlds. Your everyday life as a high school student, and your alter ego as a phantom thief. By day, you're living in Tokyo, going to school, hanging out with friends, working part-time jobs, and even studying. Yes, there are in-game quizzes, but by night, you're diving into these surreal, mind-bending dungeons called palaces to steal the twisted desires of villains and, save the world. Another thing that sets Persona 5 Royal apart is the combat. It's turn-based, but with a twist that makes every encounter feel dynamic. And you get to summon powerful creatures called personas to aid you in battle. It's flashy, fast, and incredibly satisfying when you manage to exploit enemy weaknesses and pull off a team combo. Plus, Royal adds even more personas and abilities to the mix, which just makes the whole thing even more engaging. And if you're wondering what makes Persona 5 Royal different from the original Persona 5, it's like getting an expanded director's cut. You get extra story content, new characters, an additional semester at school, and a brand new palace. These additions don't just feel like bonus content, but more like necessary pieces that deepen the story and characters even further. Elden Ring NIGHTREIGN, a game that takes the sprawling open-world design and layered combat mechanics the series is known for, and builds on them with a darker, more intense focus on tactical gameplay and exploration. It doesn't just expand on what worked before, but introduces a whole new depth to how you approach challenges and the way you navigate its world. At its core, this game is all about mastering the art of combat while uncovering the secrets of a sprawling, interconnected world. It's packed with dangers around every corner, but each area feels like it has its own personality. The environments are rich with detail and designed in a way that encourages you to explore every nook and cranny. From hidden pathways to unexpected encounters, there's always something to keep you on your toes. The combat system is as layered as ever. The focus on precision and timing remains central, but there's a stronger emphasis on adapting to unique encounters. You're not just swinging a sword or casting a spell, you're learning the strengths and weaknesses of your enemies, and figuring out how to use your arsenal effectively. Whether it's experimenting with new weapons or mastering a fresh ability, the game gives you plenty of options to keep things interesting. The addition of new mechanics brings another layer of depth to gameplay. There's a heightened focus on nighttime exploration, which changes the dynamic of how you approach the world. Some areas feel more dangerous after the sun sets. The Last of Us Part 2. Now, I know this game stirred up a lot of heated discussions when it dropped, but let's be real, some of the hate was totally overblown. First off, people were divided right from the start due to the story direction. Without getting into spoilers, it's safe to say that the game took some big narrative risk. Naughty Dog didn't just play it safe with this one. They were like, nah, we're going all in. And while some fans weren't ready for those changes, that's exactly what makes the game bold. It wasn't afraid to challenge your emotions and expectations, and not every game dares to do that. Also, let's not forget how incredible the gameplay and world building are. Whether or not you agree with the story choices, the game is undeniably polished. The combat is intense, the environments are stunning, and the small details make the world feel lived in. Those aspects of the game were universally praised, and for good reason. The AI is surprisingly smart too. Enemies react to your tactics, work together, and even call out to each other by name, which makes it feel way more personal when you're in the thick of it. It adds this extra layer of immersion that's hard to ignore. Ultimately, The Last of Us 2 was unfairly hated by some, but over time, people have started to recognize its strengths. It's one of those games where, once you let go of the preconceived ideas and just take it for what it is, you realize how well-crafted and powerful it is. I think a lot of the initial backlash came from the hype and expectations. People had this picture-perfect idea of what a sequel should be. Forza Horizon 5. Even if you're not a racing game person, trust me, you'll still find something to love here. It's like a love letter to cars, exploration, and just having a good time behind the wheel. Remember when you used to race toy cars around your living room, making up little adventures as you went? Forza Horizon 5 brings that same energy, but cranks it up to 11. It's not just about winning races, though that's fun too. It's about playing. The freedom you have to do whatever you want is amazing. They've got everything from souped-up classics to hypercars that look like they belong in a sci-fi movie. And the customization. You can tweak everything. Paint jobs, performance, even little decals. It's like a car nerd's dream come true. But don't worry, you don't have to be a gearhead to enjoy it. The game does a great job of keeping things accessible. Whether you're a casual player or a hardcore racer, the controls are just buttery smooth, and the way each car handles feels unique. Want to go off-roading in a big, beefy truck? Go for it. Prefer zipping through city streets in a sleek sports car? Done. It's not just racing, it's an experience. And the best part? You don't even have to race if you don't want to. There are stunt challenges, speed traps, exploration events. It's like a big automotive playground. And the seasonal changes? Genius. The world evolves over time. So one week you might be racing in dry deserts, and the next you're dealing with torrential rain. It keeps things fresh and gives you an excuse to keep coming back. Portal 2, one of the smartest, funniest, and most satisfying games out there. I mean, if you've ever wondered what it's like to solve complex puzzles while being gently or not so gently insulted by an AI, this is the game to play. From the moment you wake up, you know you're in for a unique experience. You play as Chell, this silent character stuck in a strange, abandoned science facility, and your main tool is this incredible portal gun. With it, you can create 2 connected portals on certain surfaces, letting you move through them in ways that feel almost magical. The whole concept of thinking with portals is amazing because it forces you to look at puzzles in a totally different way. What I love about Portal 2 is how it gradually ramps up the challenge. At first, it's simple stuff, figuring out where to place portals to get from point A to point B. But then they throw in all these wild mechanics like tractor beams, light bridges, and these crazy gels that speed you up or make you bounce. It's like each level is teaching you to think bigger, get more creative, and really push the limits of what's possible with just portals. The best part, though, has to be the co-op mode. Portal 2 lets you team up with a friend, and it's an absolute blast. You play as 2 adorable robots, and the puzzles are designed around the idea of working together. It's hilarious, challenging, and such a great way to test your teamwork. If you're into smart puzzles, and a game that constantly surprises you, Portal 2 is an absolute must-play. Star Wars Battlefront 2. This game drops you right into the middle of the Star Wars universe, giving you the chance to live out some epic battles across iconic planets, ships, and settings. It's all about scale and immersion, letting you experience the chaos of large-scale battles while you play as troopers, heroes, or even iconic villains from the galaxy far, far away. The gameplay is a fantastic mix of blasters, lightsabers, and tactical teamwork. You've got modes that throw you into massive, objective-based battles with ground troops, vehicles, and aerial combat blending into one seamless experience. Whether you're leading a charge as a heavy-class soldier or soaring above the battlefield in an X-Wing, every role feels crucial. The class-based system encourages variety, and you'll find yourself jumping between different playstyles, depending on what the battle demands. The heroes and villains are the showstoppers here. From Darth Vader to Rey, every character feels distinct, with their own unique abilities that can completely turn the tide of battle. You can deflect blaster bolts as a Jedi, choke enemies as a Sith, or wreak havoc with someone like Boba Fett, flying across the map and raining destruction. It's hard not to feel powerful when you step onto the battlefield as one of these legendary figures. Multiplayer is where this game shines brightest. Modes like Galactic Assault and Supremacy offer large-scale battles that feel straight out of a Star Wars movie. Lies of P. It's one of those games that takes a classic story and flips it into something totally unexpected. I mean, a dark, twisted version of Pinocchio? Who saw that coming? From the moment I started playing, I knew this wasn't going to be the fairy tale we all grew up with. Instead, it throws you into this grim, steampunk world where everything feels eerie and dangerous. The atmosphere is on point. There's this constant tension in the air, like you're never quite safe, even when you're just walking through a quiet alley. The game wears its inspirations on its sleeve, and if you've played Bloodborne or Dark Souls, you'll feel right at home here. The combat is that familiar, deliberate style, where every swing of your weapon matters, and timing is everything. But Lies of P adds its own twist with the weapon customization system. You can mix and match blades and handles to create your own combos, which gives you a ton of freedom to experiment with different builds. It's honestly so satisfying when you find a combination that just clicks with your playstyle. The enemies are no joke. Each one feels like a real threat, and you can't just rush in and expect to button mash your way through. You've got to be patient, learn their patterns, and strike when the moment is right. And the bosses? They're some of the most intense encounters I've had in a while. Every time I thought I was getting the hang of things, a new boss would come along and completely wreck me. But in the best way. It's that feeling of frustration followed by pure joy when you finally take them down. If you're into challenging combat, Lies of P is definitely worth your time. Street Fighter 6. First off, this game doesn't just toss you into the action and say, good luck. It genuinely wants you to succeed. There's an entire suite of tools designed to help you get better at the game, whether you're a complete newbie or a seasoned pro. From the controls to the tutorials, everything feels approachable without ever dumbing it down. It's a game that respects your time and your willingness to learn. And honestly, that's pretty refreshing in a genre that can sometimes feel intimidating. It's got that classic Street Fighter DNA, but with just enough new twists to make it feel fresh and exciting. Every punch, kick, and fireball feels like it packs a serious punch. The roster of fighters is stacked with returning legends and new faces that each bring something unique to the table. It's not just about picking your favorite character. It's about finding one that feels like an extension of your playstyle. Whether you like to get up close and personal or keep your distance with flashy moves, there's someone here for you. Oh, and the combos? They're ridiculously satisfying to pull off. There's nothing quite like stringing together a sequence of moves, landing a perfect counter, and then watching the results play out in slow motion. It's the kind of thing that makes you feel like a fighting game genius, even if you're just mashing buttons half the time. Whether you're honing your skills, customizing your character, or jumping online for some friendly or not so friendly competition, there's always something to do. Skyrim. Where do you even start with a game like Skyrim? This game is just huge. It's one of those games that just keeps pulling you in, no matter how many times you've played it before. You boot it up thinking, I'll just play for an hour. And next thing you know, it's 3 a.m. and you're sneaking around in the Thieves Guild or fighting a dragon on top of a mountain. First off, the world. It's absolutely massive and it feels alive, from the snowy peaks of the Throat of the World to the rolling plains of Whiterun. Every part of Skyrim feels like it has its own story to tell, and the fact that you can go anywhere, do anything. It's such a freeing experience. Like, if you see a mountain in the distance, you can actually go there, and you never know what's going to happen along the way. Maybe you run into a giant, or you stumble upon some hidden cave with its own little quest line. It's just endless discovery. The combat, well, it's classic Skyrim. It's not about being super fancy or fast-paced, but it's about choice. You want to swing a giant axe? Go for it. Prefer sneaking around with a bow or dual-wielding daggers? Totally doable. Or maybe you want to go full wizard, summoning flames and raising the dead. Whatever your style, the game lets you play exactly how you want. And speaking of choice, the quests are insane. Sure, there's the main story about you being the Dragonborn with the whole saving the world thing. But honestly, the side quests are where it's at. You can get caught up joining the Dark Brotherhood and becoming an assassin, or leading the companions and becoming a werewolf. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, a game that somehow managed to take everything magical about Breath of the Wild and just amp it up to 11. Right off the bat, I've got to say the world is absolutely breathtaking. They've kept that stunning, painterly art style that's somehow both cozy and epic at the same time. You get these incredible sweeping landscapes, misty forests, hidden caves, and yes, floating islands in the sky. The verticality is on another level, and it makes exploring feel fresh and new. Climbing up mountains and discovering secret paths high above Hyrule is so rewarding. You feel like an adventurer, just setting off with nothing but curiosity as your guide. One of the best parts of Tears of the Kingdom is how it encourages creativity. It's not just about following a set path or checking things off a list. You can go wherever, tackle objectives in whatever order you like, and use all sorts of fun mechanics to solve puzzles or defeat enemies. I found myself thinking outside the box constantly. The game rewards you for being inventive, and every time you pull off some crazy solution, it's like, whoa, I actually did that. The physics, the way you interact with objects, even how you use Link's new abilities. It all feels like Nintendo wanted you to experiment and have a blast doing it. And let's talk about those new abilities. Without spoiling anything, I'll just say that Link's got some seriously cool tricks up his sleeve. These aren't just fun gimmicks. They totally change how you approach the world. Remember the excitement when you first learned to climb anything in Breath of the Wild? We have Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled. This game is a pure adrenaline rush on wheels. A kart racing masterpiece that doesn't just pay homage to the classic, but revs it up for a new generation. It's all about fast-paced, chaotic racing with vibrant tracks, hilarious characters, and some truly wild power-ups that will have you laughing and yelling at the screen in equal measure. At its core, the game is an exhilarating ride through cleverly designed tracks filled with twists, jumps, shortcuts, and plenty of hazards to keep you on your toes. It's not just about racing, it's about mastering the art of drifting, boosting, and timing your power-ups perfectly to leave your rivals in the dust, or knock them off the track entirely. The controls are tight, intuitive, and wonderfully responsive, making every race feel like a test of skill rather than luck. The variety of characters is another big highlight. Every racer brings their own quirky personality to the game, with some fan favorites from the original making a comeback and a few fun surprises added to the roster. Customization takes things up a notch, letting you tweak your karts and characters with a ton of unlockable skins, decals, and wheels. It's a kart racing playground that lets you put your personal stamp on every race. Multiplayer is where the game really shines. Whether you're battling it out online or settling grudges in split-screen mode, the chaos ramps up tenfold when you're playing against friends or strangers. GREEDFALL. It's this cool mix of fantasy and colonialism. I feel like it flew under the radar for a lot of people, but once you dive in, it's hard to stop. You know that feeling when a game has such a rich world, and you're like, why didn't I hear more about this? That's GREEDFALL for me. The first thing that really struck me was the setting. It's got this new world exploration feel, but instead of America or something, you've got this mysterious island called Tir-Fradee, filled with monsters and these indigenous tribes who have their own deep culture. Honestly, I think the world building is one of the game's strongest points. Like, there's this constant sense of discovery, and every place feels like it's hiding a secret or two. And the story. It's a classic RPG in the sense that your choices really shape the narrative. I found myself agonizing over some of the decisions, like, do I side with the natives or the colonial factions? Do I negotiate or fight? It really makes you think about the consequences, which I appreciate. It's not just black and white morality either. It's all these shades of gray. I think that's why it kept me hooked. It's a game that rewards you for paying attention to details and thinking about your choices. The companions are super well done too. I love how they've got their own backstories and personal quests, and the interactions with them feel meaningful. I actually cared about what happened to them, which doesn't always happen in RPGs, So yeah, if you're into RPGs with a bit of a twist, GREEDFALL is definitely worth checking out. It Takes Two. It's easily one of the most creative co-op experiences I've ever played. From the very start, you realize that it's not your typical platformer. It's all about teamwork. Whether you're playing with a friend, partner, or even someone you just met, the whole experience becomes this shared journey that's honestly so much fun. The level design is incredible. Every single level is packed with unique mechanics that are specific to that environment. 1 minute, you're in a garden where one player's watering plants while the other's chopping through obstacles. The next, you're in a clock tower, messing with time itself. It's never repetitive because each new area throws something different at you. The gameplay just keeps evolving. One of my favorite sections was when one of us could fly on this paper airplane while the other navigated obstacles on the ground. It's all about trust and coordination. What I also really appreciate is how the game balances difficulty. It's not too hard, but it does require you to think and communicate. There were moments where my co-op partner and I would be stuck for a minute, but it always felt rewarding when we figured it out together. You're constantly learning how to rely on each other's strengths, which is such a fun way to approach co-op. Honestly, what really stands out to me about It Takes Two is just how much fun it is. I mean, you're not just playing a game, you're sharing this experience with someone else, and you're both equally important to making it through the story. Whether you're laughing at the absurd situations or getting a little competitive with the mini-games. HELLBLADE 2. The first HELLBLADE was all about that raw, emotional journey and its deep dive into mental health. So when the sequel came out, a lot of people were expecting the same kind of intimate experience. And while it definitely delivers on atmosphere and emotion, not everyone's on board with some of the changes. One of the big things people are talking about is the shift towards more combat. In the first game, the fighting was kind of secondary to the story. It was there, but it wasn't the main focus. With HELLBLADE 2, they've definitely ramped up the action, and some fans aren't too happy about that. They wanted more of those quiet, introspective moments that made the first game stand out. But honestly, I think the combat adds a new layer of intensity. Sure, it's more frequent, but it's still tied to Senua's emotional journey, and it makes sense within the context of the story. Another thing that stirred up some controversy is whether the game leans too heavily into its cinematic elements. There's a lot of visual spectacle in HELLBLADE 2. The graphics are insane, and the world building is next level, but some players feel like it's trying to be more of a movie than a game, which has rubbed a few people the wrong way. I get that, but at the same time, this is what HELLBLADE is all about, immersing you in this visceral, haunting world. What I love, though, is how HELLBLADE 2 stays true to its roots. Despite all these changes, it still tackles heavy themes like trauma and mental illness, and it does it with a lot of care and respect. That alone makes it stand out in today's gaming landscape. And even with more combat. Atomic Heart. From the moment you jump into this weird, retro-futuristic Soviet world, you can tell you're in for something totally different. The whole vibe of the game is what grabbed me first. It's like if BioShock and Half-Life had this crazy alternate reality baby. The setting just pulls you in right away. Everything's all shiny and utopian on the surface, but you can feel this eerie tension creeping in. Like something's definitely not right here. The aesthetics? Absolutely stunning. It's got this whole 1950s retro sci-fi look, but it's set in this alternate version of the USSR where technology advanced in these weird, unsettling ways. Robots everywhere. And they're not your friendly, helpful kind either. As you're exploring, you've got this constant sense of, okay, when's the next crazy thing gonna try and kill me? It keeps you on edge, but in a fun way. Combat is intense, but super satisfying. You've got all these cool weapons, and then you mix in these crazy powers you can use with your left hand. It's like you're blasting enemies with a shotgun in one hand while using telekinesis or freezing them with your other hand. The mix of gunplay and abilities just feels so smooth and fluid. And let me tell you, when you finally master the combo system, you feel like a total badass. The enemies are really something too. You've got these creepy humanoid robots with weird, unsettling movements, and then there are the more bizarre, out there designs that look like something out of a fever dream. Little Nightmares 2. From the moment you step into its eerie, twisted world, you know you're in for a wild ride. If you enjoyed the first game, this one takes everything that made Little Nightmares so great and cranks it up a notch. The atmosphere is even more disturbing, the puzzles are more challenging, and the story, while still cryptic, pulls you deeper into this unsettling nightmare realm. You play as Mono, a new character, but you're not alone. 6. The protagonist from the first game is there with you, and having that companion dynamic adds a new layer to the gameplay. It's cool how the game makes you rely on each other to get through the twisted environments. You'll need to work together to solve puzzles, escape enemies, and navigate the nightmarish world around you. It's not a co-op game, but that teamwork element feels fresh and gives you a stronger emotional connection to the characters. The world in Little Nightmares 2 is just as unsettling as you'd expect. It's full of grotesque, distorted creatures that'll send shivers down your spine. The design of the enemies is one of the game's strongest points. Each one is creepier than the last, and the way they move and interact with the environment keeps you on edge the whole time. There's a constant feeling of being hunted, which makes every encounter feel tense and nerve-wracking. What's really great about the game is how it balances those intense chase scenes with quieter, more atmospheric moments. You'll go from heart-pounding sequences where you're being chased by terrifying enemies. Resident Evil 6, probably one of the most controversial entries in the Resident Evil series. When it came out, a lot of longtime fans were really disappointed, and it got a ton of hate for straying too far from the classic survival horror roots. One of the big criticisms was that it tried to do too much. The game had 4 separate campaigns, each with its own tone and gameplay style. You had Leon's campaign, which felt more like the traditional Resident Evil survival horror, but then you had Chris's and Jake's campaigns, which were full-on action shooters. It left some players feeling like the game had an identity crisis. It wasn't sure if it wanted to be horror or action, and that split the fanbase. But here's the thing, Resident Evil 6 isn't a bad game. It's just different. If you go in expecting a pure horror experience, yeah, you might be disappointed. But if you approach it as a crazy, action-packed adventure with some horror elements sprinkled in, there's a lot of fun to be had. The variety in the campaigns means there's something for everyone. And the co-op play was a big highlight for people who like playing with friends. And let's be honest, some of the hate was probably just because it wasn't what fans expected after the success of Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 5. Those games were a hard act to follow. And RE6 took some big risks. Sure, not all of them landed, but it also had some really cool moments, epic boss battles, and impressive visuals for its time. Despite all the complaints, Resident Evil 6 still has some great moments. Rise of the Tomb Raider. This game really took me by surprise in the best way possible. I mean, I knew going in it was going to be a solid game, but it actually exceeded my expectations on so many levels. First off, the environments are stunning. Every single location feels meticulously crafted, from the frozen Siberian mountains to the hidden tombs. You really feel like you're on this epic adventure with Lara. I found myself just stopping to take in the views at times, which isn't something I do often in action games. And speaking of action, the combat and stealth mechanics are incredibly satisfying. You get this perfect blend of intense firefights, sneaky takedowns, and crafting that just keeps you engaged throughout. There's this real sense of progression, too. By the end of the game, I felt like Lara had grown so much, not just as a character, but in terms of abilities. You can craft your own explosives, improve your gear, and upgrade your skills, so it feels like you're always evolving. The game nails that feeling of being alone in the wilderness. There were plenty of moments where I felt like Lara was up against impossible odds, but her resilience kept pushing her forward. There's something really inspiring about that. It's like you're constantly in survival mode, scavenging for resources, battling enemies, and fighting the elements. I have to say, the tombs themselves are a standout. They're optional, but trust me, they're worth exploring. Some of the puzzles had me scratching my head for a while, but that moment of solving them is so satisfying. Death Stranding, one of the most divisive games out there. When this game dropped, it was like half the gaming community loved it, and the other half was just like, what is this? It's a Hideo Kojima game, so you know it was going to be unique. But Death Stranding took that to a whole new level. Instead of fast-paced action or combat-heavy gameplay, you're a delivery guy in a post-apocalyptic world. It's a game about walking, hiking, and, yes, carrying boxes. People were super confused by the whole concept, especially because the marketing was so mysterious. The trailers didn't really explain much. And when players realized they'd be spending a lot of time delivering packages across desolate landscapes, some were disappointed. It wasn't the action-packed game people expected from the creator of Metal Gear Solid. But here's where the game shines. Death Stranding isn't trying to be a traditional game. It's about the journey, the connections you make, and the feeling of isolation in a broken world. And if you get into that mindset, the game is really something special. It's strangely relaxing, even though it has some seriously intense moments. The way it handles the idea of connecting players, allowing you to help out others in the world by leaving equipment or building structures, was pretty innovative. It made the world feel shared, even though it's a single-player game. Sure, it's not for everyone. If you're looking for constant action, Death Stranding might not be your cup of tea, but if you're in the mood for something different, something that really takes its time to build atmosphere, it's a game that delivers a unique experience. Final Fantasy XV. This game definitely got its fair share of criticism when it first launched, but honestly, it's such a gem once you dig into it. A lot of the hate stemmed from expectations, especially from longtime fans of the Final Fantasy series. People wanted it to be a certain way, and when it turned out to be a bit different, it threw everyone off. One of the big controversies was about the story and how parts of it felt, well, incomplete. A lot of fans felt like there were pieces missing, and to be fair, they're kind of right. Square Enix did add DLCs later to fill in some of the gaps, which helped a lot, but I get why people were frustrated. And then there's the combat system, which definitely divided people. It's way more action-oriented than older Final Fantasy games, which threw some fans off. Instead of the traditional turn-based style, you're zipping around the battlefield, warping in and out of combat, and timing your attacks in real time. Personally, I think it's a blast. It feels fast, intense, and once you get the hang of it, there's a real flow to the battles that's so satisfying. Plus, you get to use all these cool weapons and powers, and switching between them mid-fight keeps things exciting. I get that it's not everyone's cup of tea, but it brings a fresh energy to the series, and if you go in with an open mind, it's a lot of fun. Final Fantasy XV gives you this huge, open world to explore, and it's stunning. You're cruising around in your car, the regalia, discovering gorgeous landscapes, stopping at outposts, and finding hidden treasures along the way. Metro Exodus. This game is something else. If you're into immersive worlds with deep storytelling, this one's going to grab you right from the start. I remember jumping in, and immediately, I felt like I was actually there. trudging through the post-apocalyptic Russian wasteland, feeling every bit of that bleak yet oddly beautiful atmosphere. What's really cool about Metro Exodus is how it takes the series from the underground tunnels and opens it up to these massive open areas without losing that signature claustrophobic tension. You still get those tight, nerve-wracking moments where you're creeping through dark, creepy tunnels. But now, you also have these wide-open spaces that make you feel a sense of freedom and danger at the same time. There's something about walking through a desolate, snowy wasteland and then hearing the distant howl of a mutant that gets your heart racing. Artyom's journey is such an emotional one. He's not just trying to survive. He's out there searching for hope, for a place where humanity can rebuild. You can feel how much this means to him and his crew. That bond between them, especially with his wife Anna, really hit me. You're not just a lone wolf. You've got a family, a team that cares for each other, and that gives everything this extra layer of tension. You want to protect them, to keep them safe. You've got to constantly think about how you're using your resources. Do you craft more ammo, or do you focus on a new gas mask filter because the radiation's about to kill you? That balance adds a lot of strategy to the game. Like a dragon, infinite wealth. If you're familiar with the Yakuza series, you already know you're in for something big, bold, and just a little over the top. This game picks up with our guy, Ichiban Kasuga, who's back for another round of absolute chaos, heartwarming moments, and more twists than you can count. And let me tell you, if you're ready for a journey that's equal parts action, drama, and pure hilarity, this one's going to hit the spot. What makes Infinite Wealth stand out is how it blends a serious story with some of the funniest, most bizarre side activities you'll ever see. 1 minute, you're dealing with intense, emotional scenes. The next, you're wrapped up in a totally ridiculous minigame, and you're laughing because it's so outrageous. It's like they managed to throw in every wild idea they could think of, and somehow it all works. And with Ichiban leading the way, every moment feels fresh and unpredictable. Now, the turn-based combat, it's back, and better than ever. The strategy side of things adds this fun layer to every battle, and it's packed with quirky moves that only a game like a Dragon could pull off. And if you've played the previous games, you'll notice the combat's even more refined here. It's still got that signature mix of outlandish attacks and strategic depth, which makes every fight feel epic and hilarious at the same time. But beyond the action, it's really about the characters. Ichiban is one of those protagonists who's impossible not to root for. He's got this mix of loyalty, optimism, and pure heart that makes him stand out. Far Cry 5. It's got all the things you'd expect from a Far Cry game. Open-world chaos, intense gunfights, and that sense of freedom to approach missions however you want. But this time, it's all set in the rural heartland of America, and that gives it a totally different vibe. What I loved about Far Cry 5 is how open-ended the gameplay is. You can literally do things your way. Want to storm a cult outpost, guns blazing? Go for it. Prefer to sneak around with a bow, taking out enemies silently? That works too. And then there's the ridiculous factor. This is a game where you can call in a bear named Cheeseburger or a dog, Boomer, to help you in battle. It's over the top in the best way. One of the big changes in Far Cry 5 is the way missions work. There's no set structure or main storyline that you're forced to follow. Instead, you earn resistance points by completing side missions, liberating outposts, and causing general chaos. As you build up resistance in each region, the story progresses naturally. It's a cool way to keep things feeling dynamic, and lets you choose how you want to play. There's also a ton of customization. You can upgrade your weapons, unlock perks, and even hire guns for hire to help you out in tough situations. There's a strategy to how you approach each mission, but it's always balanced by that freedom to just go nuts if you want to. One thing that stood out for me is how relevant the game feels. The whole idea of a cult taking over a rural town and pushing their beliefs on people. It's unsettling because it feels like something that could actually happen. Fallout 4. This game is all about exploring a massive, post-apocalyptic world filled with adventure, surprises, and the freedom to forge your own story. Right from the start, you're stepping into a world that feels alive. Well, as alive as a wasteland can be. You emerge into this beautifully ruined version of Boston, and there's this sense of mystery about what happened, who survived, and how you'll carve out your place in it. One of the best parts about Fallout 4 is just how much freedom you have. Want to be a hero, saving settlements and helping people out? Go for it. Prefer to be more of a lone wanderer, exploring every nook and cranny at your own pace? You can totally do that too. The game really lets you make those decisions and watch as the world reacts to you, which makes it feel super personal. And the combat, super satisfying. You can target specific body parts on enemies, which gives battles a bit of a strategic twist. Whether you're up against raiders, mutated creatures, or robots, every fight keeps you on your toes. And the weapon variety is massive. You can go from a simple pipe pistol to a full-blown laser rifle. Whatever fits your style. Plus, there's so much to discover. Every abandoned shack, rusted-out car, and hidden bunker has a story, whether it's in the form of an old journal, a skeleton in an odd place, or a stash of supplies that makes you wonder who left it behind. Fallout 4 is full of these tiny details that make the world feel rich and layered, like you're uncovering secrets at every turn. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. This game is like a massive playground of imagination. I'll start by saying that if you're a fan of eye-popping visuals, crazy weapons, and charming characters, this is a must-play. Right from the start, you're thrown into this super vibrant animated world. And when I say vibrant, I mean vibrant. The visuals here are insane. It's honestly like playing through a Pixar movie. The combat is chef's kiss. You have this insane arsenal of weapons, and each one is wilder than the last. I mean, only Ratchet and Clank could come up with weapons like a gun that turns enemies into plants. That's right, you can go full botanist on some evil aliens. There's this fun balance where you have to keep switching weapons, and because they're all so unique, combat never feels repetitive. Plus, upgrading them is addicting. You're always excited to see what ridiculous upgrade you'll unlock next. The game somehow keeps you on your toes, thinking, okay, what can I do next to make this even crazier? And let's talk rifts for a second, because they're just so clever. You've got these dimensional portals that let you zip around the battlefield or enter totally new areas in seconds. It's like a whole new way of moving and exploring, and it makes the game feel like nothing else out there. Plus, there's this thrill in zipping through dimensions without a single loading screen. It's a mechanic that's so fresh, it almost feels like you're playing an action movie, where every second keeps you glued to the screen. Rift Apart is perfect for players of all ages. Just Cause 4. It's one of those games that you can't help but have fun with. The chaos, the explosions, the sheer scale of everything. It's like they designed it with the word epic in mind. You step into the boots of Rico Rodriguez once again, and right from the start, you're thrown into a massive open world with more possibilities than you can count. One of the first things you notice is how alive the world feels. Tornadoes, thunderstorms, blizzards, they're not just pretty to look at, they actually change the way you play. I remember the first time I got caught in a tornado. I had no idea what to do, but then I realized it doesn't matter. Just roll with it, because that's the spirit of Just Cause. The weather system isn't just a gimmick. It's part of the chaos that makes the game so unique. Then there's the grappling hook. It's not just a tool anymore, it's a way of life. You can customize it in so many ways, from making things float in midair, to pulling objects together, to create chain reactions. It's insane. It's like the game is begging you to experiment, to find new ways to destroy everything in sight. The story in Just Cause 4 isn't the deepest thing in the world, but let's be honest, that's not why you're here. You're here to blow things up in the most creative ways possible, and the game gives you everything you need to do just that. You've got jets, tanks, helicopters, boats, and more. If it moves, you can hijack it. And if it doesn't move, well, you can probably make it explode. Infamous Second Son. It's such a great pick when looking back at favorite games, especially after all these years. It's one of those games that might not always get mentioned in the big best of all time list, but for those who played it, it really leaves a lasting impression. The game came out as one of the earlier titles for the PS4. And honestly, it still holds up really well. You step into the shoes of Delson Rowe, a rebellious guy who suddenly gets these insane superpowers. What I love about the game is how good it feels to actually use those powers. Whether you're running up buildings, gliding through the air, or just wrecking shop with your abilities, the movement and action feel super smooth and fun. The game absolutely nails that sense of power, which, let's face it, is what we're all here for in a superhero-style game. Seattle is the backdrop for all the action, and they did such a good job with the city's vibe. It's not a carbon copy of the real Seattle, but it's got enough personality to feel alive, and the way the environment changes based on your actions is a nice touch. That whole dynamic, where your choices matter, whether you want to be a hero or lean into a more destructive, rebellious path, adds a layer of replayability. And honestly, both paths are equally fun. Infamous Second Son really nails that feeling of freedom, and the pacing keeps you engaged from start to finish. It's one of those games where you can easily lose hours just exploring, testing out your powers, and getting into epic showdowns with the game's enemies. Sniper Elite Resistance. Set against the gritty backdrop of World War II, it throws you into the chaos of an occupied territory where stealth and strategy are your best friends. The heart of the gameplay is sniping. But it's not just about lining up the perfect shot. It's about thinking ahead, reading the environment, and understanding how to use it to your advantage. The maps are vast and filled with opportunities for creative problem solving. Whether it's setting up traps or finding hidden vantage points, the game rewards exploration and clever thinking. It's the kind of game where you feel like every choice matters and every shot counts. One of the standout features is how much freedom it gives you. The game doesn't hold your hand or shove you down a single path. Instead, it drops you into these large, open areas and lets you figure out how to handle the mission. If you prefer sneaking around like a ghost, avoiding confrontation, the game fully supports that. If you want to go loud and make your presence known, that's an option too, though it's definitely more challenging. The balance between stealth and action keeps things exciting. The resistance element adds a unique twist. It's not just you against the enemy. There's a sense of being part of something bigger. You're not just completing objectives for personal gain, but striking a blow for a larger cause. This adds an extra layer of immersion and makes every small victory feel like it has a purpose. There's a strong emphasis on teamwork, even if you're playing solo. Guardians of the Galaxy. This one's interesting because it kind of had everything going for it, but for some reason, it didn't hit as big as people expected at launch. I mean, you've got one of the most beloved Marvel teams, a great developer, Eidos Montreal, and a focus on single-player storytelling, which is something a lot of people were craving, but when it dropped, it just didn't make the splash it should have. So, what happened? Well, for one, people were still feeling the aftershocks of Marvel's Avengers. That game didn't really land well with fans, and it made a lot of people skeptical about Guardians. Folks saw another Marvel game and thought, here we go again with another live service mess. Even though Guardians of the Galaxy is nothing like that. It's a totally single-player, story-driven experience with zero microtransactions or live service elements. But it got lumped in with Avengers, and that hurt its initial reception. Now let's talk about the controversial stuff. The characters. Some fans were thrown off because the game's versions of Star-Lord, Gamora, and the rest of the crew didn't look or sound like their MCU counterparts. If you're used to Chris Pratt as Star-Lord, or Zoe Saldana as Gamora, it might take you a second to adjust to these new interpretations, but once you do, you realize they're actually great. The writing is sharp, the dialogue is hilarious, and the chemistry between the Guardians is spot on. It feels like you're right there with them, and the banter between the team is one of the best parts of the game. The combat also got mixed reactions. Some people found it a little chaotic at first. Assassin's Creed Mirage. Mirage drops you into 19th century Baghdad, and let me tell you, it's gorgeous. The city feels alive, bustling with activity, narrow streets, and towering rooftops that beg to be climbed. The attention to detail here is incredible. It's like they cracked open a history book and turned it into a vibrant, living world. If you've been a fan of the series since the early days, you'll love the gameplay here. It's all about stealth, precision, and planning. No more running into a group of enemies and fighting your way out like a tank. Mirage encourages you to think like an assassin again, sneak through crowds, blend in, climb up to a vantage point, and take your shot when the time is right. It's so satisfying when a plan comes together, and you get that perfect, clean assassination. The parkour feels so good. It's smooth, fluid, and makes navigating the city an absolute joy. There's nothing quite like sprinting across rooftops, vaulting over obstacles, and making a daring leap onto a narrow beam while a guard shouts, "Hey you!" from the street below. The freedom of movement is top tier, and it reminded me of why I fell in love with this series in the first place. The story is also a highlight. No spoilers, I promise, but it's tightly focused, and that's a good thing. After the sprawling epics of recent Assassin's Creed games, Mirage feels like a refreshing change of pace. It's more personal, more intimate, and it really leans into the assassin versus the system theme. You get to see the journey of Basim. Yes, that Basim, if you've played Valhalla. Horizon Burning Shores. This expansion is everything you'd hope for and more. taking Aloy's journey into an entirely new region filled with challenges, surprises, and jaw-dropping moments, set in a beautifully untamed area that feels wild and alive. It's all about exploring, adapting, and thriving in a world that's as dangerous as it is mesmerizing. The new landscape opens up fresh opportunities for discovery, with terrains that pushed you to think differently about how you approach traversal and combat. The highlight here is the freedom to experiment with the tools and abilities you've built up throughout the main game. The enemies in Burning Shores aren't just there to look intimidating. They're designed to test your skills in exciting ways. New machine types bring unique combat dynamics, keeping you on your toes and forcing you to adapt your strategies. The world design in Burning Shores is deeply immersive, with plenty of areas that invite exploration. Whether you're scaling cliffs, diving into the depths, or navigating open spaces, there's always something fascinating to find. Hidden treasures, mysterious locations, and cleverly placed challenges make every corner of this expansion worth exploring. The variety in the terrain ensures that no two moments feel alike, keeping the experience fresh and engaging from start to finish. The addition of new weapons and gear is another standout feature. These aren't just upgrades, they're game changers that open up creative ways to tackle enemies and solve environmental puzzles. Hogwarts Legacy. Honestly, this game is like a dream come true for anyone who's ever wanted to live out their Hogwarts fantasy. If you've grown up loving the world of Harry Potter, or just love the idea of being a wizard, this game really nails that feeling of stepping into the magical world. I mean, the second you get sorted into your house, it's like, yep, this is it. I'm at Hogwarts now. The school itself is gorgeous. They've done such an incredible job of capturing the magic and mystery of Hogwarts. You can literally spend hours just wandering around, getting lost in the hallways, finding hidden passages, and taking in all the little details. It's exactly how I imagined the castle would feel, like every corner has a secret or a bit of history waiting to be discovered. What's cool, too, is how the game lets you really craft your own story. You're not just following the Harry Potter timeline, you're in a completely new time period, which is honestly refreshing. You get to create your own character, make your own choices, and carve out your own adventure. And it's not just about being a goody-two-shoes student either. You can dive into some darker magic if you want, which is something I didn't expect but absolutely love. The combat is surprisingly deep too. At first, I thought it might be kind of simple, but there's actually a lot of strategy. You can mix and match different spells, use potions, and even summon creatures to help you out. And the way the spells are animated, like the wand flicks and the flashes of magic, it's so satisfying. You really feel like a proper witch or wizard. World War Z, this game is all about pure, chaotic fun, and it doesn't hold back. You drop right into the middle of a global outbreak, and from the first few minutes, it's non-stop swarms, loud gunfire, and the kind of team-based mayhem that makes co-op shooters such a blast. The best part? The zombies don't trickle in, they flood. Walls of them. It's wild, and it never gets old watching hundreds of them pour over ledges and down streets like a tidal wave of chaos. Gameplay is fast and focused. You've got different classes to choose from, each with their own gear and skills. And the setup works great whether you're rolling solo with bots or jumping in with friends. The teamwork feels natural, covering each other's backs, setting traps, holding choke points, and when it all clicks, it's incredibly satisfying. You really feel like you're surviving together, not just blasting through missions on your own. The missions are spread out across different parts of the world, and each one brings something unique to the table. You're in cities, subways, rooftops, always moving, always shooting, always under pressure. There's no time to relax. But that's what makes it such a good time. It's all about managing the chaos, keeping your cool, and making sure your squad doesn't get overwhelmed. There's a progression system that keeps you hooked. As you keep playing, you unlock better weapons, new perks, and gear upgrades that actually make a difference. Kena Bridge of Spirits. From the moment I started playing, I was just blown away by how stunning everything looked. It's like stepping into a Pixar movie, but you're in control. The art style is so vibrant and colorful, and the way they bring this magical world to life is just mesmerizing. Every detail feels like it was handcrafted with so much love, from the lush forests to the little creatures, the rot. I mean, those rot are just adorable, right? They're like these little black, fluffy creatures that follow you around, and they're not only cute, they're super helpful too. The gameplay, though, man, that's where it gets really fun. It's got that action-adventure feel, with some Zelda-like puzzle-solving and exploration. The combat is super smooth, and the combination of your staff attacks and the rot helping you out is such a cool mechanic. I loved how you can use the rot to distract enemies or empower your attacks. And the way the game gradually gives you new abilities keeps things fresh. Plus, those boss fights, some of them are tough, like way tougher than I expected. They really make you strategize, which is a nice surprise in a game that looks so cozy on the surface. And speaking of cozy, the world is just so nice to explore. The puzzles are really well designed too, not too hard, but they make you feel smart when you solve them. I remember one where you had to use the rot to move objects around and align things just right, and it was just the perfect balance of challenge and satisfaction. Clair Obscure 33. This is an intricate and deeply atmospheric puzzle-adventure game that revolves around uncovering the truth. In a world shrouded in mystery and contrast, the game leans heavily into its mechanics, offering a blend of clever problem-solving and exploration that feels distinctly tailored for those who appreciate a cerebral challenge. It's a space where every element exists for a reason, demanding your attention to detail and rewarding your curiosity. Every area you explore challenges your perception, requiring you to think about space and perspective in ways that few other games dare to explore. The interplay of light and darkness serves as the foundation for its puzzles, turning even the simplest task into a layered and engaging experience. The puzzles here are methodically crafted, each one designed to push you just enough to keep you invested without ever feeling insurmountable. They rely on logic and experimentation, encouraging you to test boundaries and think creatively, whether it's manipulating objects, redirecting beams of light, or using shadows to your advantage. The game keeps its mechanics fresh by constantly introducing subtle twists that evolve as you progress. Exploration is a key part of the experience. Clair Obscure invites you to pay attention to every detail in your surroundings, as the world is filled with secrets waiting to be uncovered. This is not a game where you can rush from point A to point B. It rewards patience and observation. The Evil Within 2. If you've played the first one, you know it's already got that creepy, nightmarish vibe, but this sequel, it takes things to a whole new level. How it blends open-world elements with that tight, survival horror tension. You've got more freedom to explore this time, but it never feels too safe. Even in the open areas, there's this constant sense of dread, like something could jump out at you at any moment. And trust me, the game knows how to play with your nerves. The enemies in this game are wild. Some of the creature designs are just pure nightmare fuel, like that multi-limbed thing guardian. Still gives me the creeps just thinking about it. And don't even get me started on the bosses. Every encounter feels intense and nerve-wracking, especially since resources are still pretty scarce. You've got to be smart about when to fight and when to sneak around. The open areas give you more options for how to approach situations, which I really liked. Sometimes it felt satisfying to sneak by enemies unnoticed, and other times you'd have no choice but to go guns blazing. The game forces you to be adaptable. The story is solid too. It's got that psychological horror aspect that really messes with your head, but it also wraps up a lot of the loose ends from the first game in a satisfying way. And I've got to say, there are some twists in there that genuinely shocked me. It's not just about the scares. It's a good narrative experience too. And of course, the crafting system is back, so you can make your own ammo and gear. Kingdom Come: Deliverance 2. This game takes everything you might expect from a grounded medieval experience and deepens it into something uniquely authentic and immersive. It's not about fantasy or larger-than-life legends. It's about the grit, struggle, and everyday decisions that define life in a time where survival often hinged on skill, wit, and understanding the world around you. The game focuses on realism in a way that feels deliberate and unapologetic. Combat isn't about swinging wildly or relying on flashy moves. It's technical, calculated, and it demands a level of precision that reflects the era it's portraying. Every strike, block, or dodge feels like a decision, a moment where patience and preparation matter as much as raw skill. Weapons and armor don't just look accurate. They function as part of a system that rewards study and strategy over brute force. Villages and towns aren't just backdrops. They feel alive with routines, struggles, and histories that you can choose to engage with or observe from the sidelines. Every location feels purposeful, every interaction meaningful in shaping your path. The survival elements remain a cornerstone of the experience. Keeping track of your health, hunger, and stamina is a constant reminder that this isn't a world designed to cater to you. Your equipment needs maintenance, your skills need refining, and your choices carry consequences that ripple beyond the immediate moment. There's a tangible sense of effort in everything you do. Monster Hunter World, a game that's all about epic hunts, incredible creatures, and just a whole lot of fun. If you've ever wanted to feel like the ultimate hunter, taking down massive, fantastical beasts with a giant sword, or hammer, or bow, or even a bagpipe, then this game is calling your name. And trust me, once you start, it's hard to put down. The combat in Monster Hunter World is intense, but in the best way possible. You've got so many weapons to choose from, each with its own feel and playstyle. There's something for everyone. Whether you want to get up close and personal with a giant sword, keep your distance with a bow, or support your friends with a hunting horn, it's all there. Each weapon has its own learning curve, but mastering one feels incredibly rewarding. And the game doesn't rush you. You can spend hours just getting comfortable with different weapons and finding out which one really clicks for you. The best part about hunting, though, is that it's not just a straightforward swing till it drops kind of deal. You've got to pay attention to the monster's movements, study its behavior, and figure out when it's vulnerable. Every hunt is like a puzzle, and it's up to you to figure out how to take down each monster. It's challenging, but never frustrating, and every victory feels earned. You'll find yourself thinking, okay, maybe just one more hunt, over and over again. The monsters themselves are really the stars here. Each one is so unique, with its own behaviors, attack patterns, and quirks. Far Cry Primal. If you've played other Far Cry games, you might be expecting guns, explosions, and chaotic mayhem, right? Well, throw all of that out the window because this time, we're stepping way back in time, like 10,000 years back. Instead of modern weaponry and cars, you're rocking spears, bows, and a few other prehistoric tools that make you feel like a true Stone Age warrior. And honestly, it's such a refreshing change. There's something incredibly satisfying about hunting with a bow you crafted yourself, or sneaking through tall grass with a spear in hand, ready to take down a woolly mammoth. You feel connected to the land in a way that's hard to describe. You've got lush forests, snow-capped mountains, and rivers that glimmer in the sunlight. And it's alive with creatures you'd expect in the Stone Age. Saber-toothed tigers, mammoths, bears, you name it, it's probably roaming around. One of the coolest parts of the game is the beast taming. Yes, you can actually tame animals. Imagine being followed by your very own saber-toothed tiger, or having a giant bear at your side, ready to wreck anything that crosses your path. It's as awesome as it sounds. The game lets you bond with these creatures, and they're not just tools. They feel like companions. Honestly, it's kind of heartbreaking if you lose one in battle. What I love about Far Cry Primal is how it makes survival feel primal. You're not just running and gunning. You're scavenging, crafting, and fighting for every inch of progress. Star Wars Battlefront 2. This game drops you right into the middle of the Star Wars universe, giving you the chance to live out some epic battles across iconic planets, ships, and settings. It's all about scale and immersion, letting you experience the chaos of large-scale battles while you play as troopers, heroes, or even iconic villains from the galaxy far, far away. The gameplay is a fantastic mix of blasters, lightsabers, and tactical teamwork. You've got modes that throw you into massive, objective-based battles with ground troops, vehicles, and aerial combat blending into one seamless experience. Whether you're leading a charge as a heavy-class soldier or soaring above the battlefield in an X-Wing, every role feels crucial. The class-based system encourages variety, and you'll find yourself jumping between different playstyles, depending on what the battle demands. The heroes and villains are the showstoppers here. From Darth Vader to Rey, every character feels distinct, with their own unique abilities that can completely turn the tide of battle. You can deflect blaster bolts as a Jedi, choke enemies as a Sith, or wreak havoc with someone like Boba Fett, flying across the map and raining destruction. It's hard not to feel powerful when you step onto the battlefield as one of these legendary figures. Multiplayer is where this game shines brightest. Modes like Galactic Assault and Supremacy offer large-scale battles that feel straight out of a Star Wars movie. Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. If you're familiar with the Yakuza series, you already know you're in for something big, bold, and just a little over the top. This game picks up with our guy, Ichiban Kasuga, who's back for another round of absolute chaos, heartwarming moments, and more twists than you can count. And let me tell you, if you're ready for a journey that's equal parts action, drama, and pure hilarity, this one's going to hit the spot. What makes Infinite Wealth stand out is how it blends a serious story with some of the funniest, most bizarre side activities you'll ever see. 1 minute, you're dealing with intense emotional scenes. The next, you're wrapped up in a totally ridiculous minigame, and you're laughing because it's so outrageous. It's like they managed to throw in every wild idea they could think of, and somehow it all works. And with Ichiban leading the way, every moment feels fresh and unpredictable. Now, the turn-based combat, it's back, and better than ever. The strategy side of things adds this fun layer to every battle, and it's packed with quirky moves that only a game like a Dragon could pull off. And if you've played the previous games, you'll notice the combat's even more refined here. It's still got that signature mix of outlandish attacks and strategic depth, which makes every fight feel epic and hilarious at the same time. But beyond the action, it's really about the characters. Ichiban is one of those protagonists who's impossible not to root for. He's got this mix of loyalty, optimism, and pure heart that makes him stand out. Resident Evil 6, probably one of the most controversial entries in the Resident Evil series. When it came out, a lot of longtime fans were really disappointed, and it got a ton of hate for straying too far from the classic survival horror roots. One of the big criticisms was that it tried to do too much. The game had 4 separate campaigns, each with its own tone and gameplay style. You had Leon's campaign, which felt more like the traditional Resident Evil survival horror, but then you had Chris's and Jake's campaigns, which were full-on action shooters. It left some players feeling like the game had an identity crisis. It wasn't sure if it wanted to be horror or action, and that split the fanbase. But here's the thing. Resident Evil 6 isn't a bad game. It's just different. If you go in expecting a pure horror experience, yeah, you might be disappointed. But if you approach it as a crazy, action-packed adventure with some horror elements sprinkled in, there's a lot of fun to be had. The variety in the campaigns means there's something for everyone. And the co-op play was a big highlight for people who like playing with friends. And let's be honest, some of the hate was probably just because it wasn't what fans expected after the success of Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 5. Those games were a hard act to follow. And RE6 took some big risks. Sure, not all of them landed, but it also had some really cool moments, epic boss battles, and impressive visuals for its time. Despite all the complaints, Resident Evil 6 still has some great moments. Portal 2, one of the smartest, funniest, and most satisfying games out there. I mean, if you've ever wondered what it's like to solve complex puzzles while being gently or not so gently insulted by an AI, this is the game to play. From the moment you wake up, you know you're in for a unique experience. You play as Chell, this silent character stuck in a strange, abandoned science facility, and your main tool is this incredible portal gun. With it, you can create 2 connected portals on certain surfaces, letting you move through them in ways that feel almost magical. The whole concept of thinking with portals is amazing because it forces you to look at puzzles in a totally different way. What I love about Portal 2 is how it gradually ramps up the challenge. At first, it's simple stuff, figuring out where to place portals to get from point A to point B. But then they throw in all these wild mechanics like tractor beams, light bridges, and these crazy gels that speed you up or make you bounce. It's like each level is teaching you to think bigger, get more creative, and really push the limits of what's possible with just portals. The best part, though, has to be the co-op mode. Portal 2 lets you team up with a friend, and it's an absolute blast. You play as 2 adorable robots, and the puzzles are designed around the idea of working together. It's hilarious, challenging, and such a great way to test your teamwork. If you're into smart puzzles, and a game that constantly surprises you, Portal 2 is an absolute must-play. Biomutant. Picture this, a post-apocalyptic open world, but it's not bleak and gray. Nope, Biomutant flips the script, throwing you into this lush, colorful environment that's teeming with life, strange creatures, and a real sense of wonder. You play as this adorable, yet totally fierce, mutant critter who's out there saving, or maybe even reshaping, the world. And every choice you make has an impact. One of the coolest things about Biomutant is the customization. Right from the start, you're in charge of creating your little mutant warrior. The game has this whole DNA slider system, where you can adjust your character's appearance and abilities, so you could end up with a tiny, super intelligent creature, or a big, tough warrior. And as you play, the choices just keep coming. You'll be picking abilities, powers, and weapons that totally change up your playstyle. I mean, you're out here in a post-apocalyptic wasteland, wielding crazy cool weapons and mutant powers that make you feel like a total hero, or anti-hero, depending on how you play it. The combat is another big highlight. It's a mix of martial arts, gunplay, and mutant abilities, which gives it this flow that's just so fun. 1 minute you're dodging around, pulling off crazy combos, and the next, you're launching mutant powers to take down enemies in style. And since the world is filled with wacky enemies, the combat is always interesting and varied. Titanfall 2. If you haven't jumped into this game yet, you're in for a treat because it's one of those rare shooters that nails everything from movement to story. You're not just running and gunning here. Titanfall 2 turns you into a parkour expert, with wall running, double jumping, and slides that let you weave through the battlefield like a pro. The controls are smooth, and once you get the hang of it, it's hard to go back to other games. The map designs are built around this movement too, encouraging you to think creatively about how to get from point A to point B. There's something so satisfying about stringing together a perfect series of moves to outmaneuver enemies. And every match feels like you're pulling off action movie stunts. And then there are the Titans. If you ever wanted to pilot a giant mech, Titanfall 2 makes that dream come true. The game balances your time between playing as a pilot, the fast, agile soldier, and then calling down your Titan, which adds this completely new layer to the gameplay. Titans are powerful, heavy-hitting, and give you this awesome sense of being a walking tank. But it's not just a button mash fest. Every Titan has unique abilities and weapons, so there's actually a good bit of strategy involved. One thing that really stands out in Titanfall 2 is the campaign. Now, I know campaigns in first-person shooters can sometimes feel like a warm-up for multiplayer, but here it's a full experience on its own. It's well-paced, exciting, and even throws in some surprises that keep things fresh. Horizon Forbidden West. If you enjoyed Horizon Zero Dawn, or just love the idea of exploring a stunning post-apocalyptic world with robotic creatures, this game is everything. It takes what made the first game so special and cranks it up even further. First off, the world is absolutely breathtaking. We're talking lush forests, sweeping deserts, misty mountains, and mysterious ruins, all packed with color and life. Every time you step into a new area, it feels like you're on an epic journey, and you can just feel the love that went into designing this world. It's one of those games where you'll find yourself stopping just to admire the views. The combat is even more intense than before. You're still going up against these awesome robotic creatures, but this time there's a lot more variety in how you can approach each encounter. You can try different strategies, depending on the creature type, use traps, experiment with elemental effects, or even override certain machines to turn them into allies. It makes every fight feel unique, especially since the machines have such varied designs and behaviors. Oh, and the underwater sections? They're gorgeous, and actually add a whole new layer to the game. Now, diving into lakes and exploring submerged ruins is part of the adventure, and it's so well done. It makes the world feel even bigger and more dynamic, because you're not just stuck on land anymore. Horizon Forbidden West is a perfect mix of action, exploration, and storytelling. It's one of those games where you can spend hours just getting lost in side quests and exploring. Ghost Recon Wildlands. It's one of those games that kind of slipped under the radar for a lot of people, but honestly, it's so much fun once you get into it. I mean, the sheer scale of the open world is wild. Bolivia is your playground, and you can literally go anywhere. I remember the first time I jumped in a helicopter and just flew over this huge mountain range, seeing the sprawling landscape below. It's kind of breathtaking, even for an older game. The thing that really stands out, though, is how flexible the gameplay is. You've got this whole squad with you, and you can approach missions in so many different ways. If you're feeling tactical, you can scout out an area with your drone, mark enemies, and silently pick them off one by one. Or you can just go in guns blazing and let the chaos unfold. And I love that both options work. There's no one way to play it. And man, playing co-op with friends, that's where it gets really fun. There's nothing quite like coordinating an attack with your buddies, where everyone's got their role. One person's sniping, another's on the ground sneaking in, and then you're calling in air support. It just makes you feel like a real squad. Of course, it doesn't always go according to plan, and when everything falls apart, it turns into this hilarious mess of trying to escape or salvage the mission. But that's part of the charm, right? I also appreciate how the game doesn't take itself too seriously. Sure, it's got this gritty cartel storyline, but the characters crack jokes, and there are these moments of levity that break up the intensity. The only downside? I guess some missions can get a bit repetitive if you're playing solo for too long. Dead Space Remake, a game that completely revitalized a classic survival horror experience and honestly deserved a shot at Game of the Year. The original Dead Space was already a masterpiece, but the remake took it to another level, with modern graphics, tighter gameplay, and some amazing quality-of-life improvements. It was like stepping back into a nightmare, but with 4K visuals, and even more horrifying details. First off, the atmosphere in the Dead Space remake was next level. The USG Ishimura felt more alive, and dead, than ever. Every creak, every shadow, and every flickering light just added to that sense of dread. The developers did an incredible job preserving what made the original so terrifying, while also cranking up the immersion. They rebuilt the whole game from the ground up, and it showed in how polished the environments were. The lighting alone made certain sections feel way scarier than before, like you're always one step away from something terrible. But here's the thing. While the Dead Space remake was stunning and faithful to its source material, some people argued that it didn't do enough to push the genre forward, which is probably why it didn't take home the Game of the Year trophy. It was a fantastic remake, but it stayed close to the original's formula, which, for some, felt more like a tribute than a bold new experience. But here's the bottom line. The Dead Space remake did exactly what it set out to do, remind us why this franchise is one of the best in survival horror. The fact that it didn't win Game of the Year doesn't take away from the fact that it was one of the most polished and terrifying games of 2023, Rise of the Tomb Raider. This game really took me by surprise in the best way possible. I mean, I knew going in it was going to be a solid game, but it actually exceeded my expectations on so many levels. First off, the environments are stunning. Every single location feels meticulously crafted, from the frozen Siberian mountains to the hidden tombs. You really feel like you're on this epic adventure with Lara. I found myself just stopping to take in the views at times, which isn't something I do often in action games. And speaking of action, the combat and stealth mechanics are incredibly satisfying. You get this perfect blend of intense firefights, sneaky takedowns, and crafting that just keeps you engaged throughout. There's this real sense of progression, too. By the end of the game, I felt like Lara had grown so much, not just as a character, but in terms of abilities. You can craft your own explosives, improve your gear, and upgrade your skills, so it feels like you're always evolving. The game nails that feeling of being alone in the wilderness. There were plenty of moments where I felt like Lara was up against impossible odds, but her resilience kept pushing her forward. There's something really inspiring about that. It's like you're constantly in survival mode, scavenging for resources, battling enemies, and fighting the elements. I have to say, the tombs themselves are a standout. They're optional, but trust me, they're worth exploring. Some of the puzzles had me scratching my head for a while, but that moment of solving them is so satisfying. Sleeping Dogs Definitive Edition. This game is seriously underrated and deserves way more love. Imagine an open-world action game set in the bustling streets of Hong Kong, where you play as an undercover cop tangled up in the city's dangerous criminal underworld. It's like GTA, but with a unique twist that really sets it apart. And let's not forget the driving. Sleeping Dogs has some of the most fun driving mechanics out there. It's super arcadey, and you can do crazy stunts, hijack cars on the go, and even ram other cars off the road. There's something so satisfying about zooming through the city, dodging traffic, and knowing you can hop out at any time to start a fistfight. The city is alive with neon lights, crowded markets, and tons of little side activities that make it feel so authentic. You can go sing karaoke. Yes, karaoke. Try your luck at street races, or just cruise around and soak in the atmosphere. The developers did a fantastic job capturing the vibe of Hong Kong, and it's a city you actually want to explore. One of the best parts of Sleeping Dogs is the hand-to-hand combat. It's like a martial arts movie come to life. You're throwing punches, countering moves, and using your environment in the coolest ways. You can slam enemies into fish tanks, toss them off balconies, and even use random objects around you to gain the upper hand. So, if you're into action games with a great story and a city that feels alive and vibrant, Sleeping Dogs Definitive Edition is absolutely worth checking out. Mortal Kombat 11. The game that takes everything you know and love about this legendary franchise and cranks it up to 11, literally. The combat feels tight, responsive, and packed with layers of depth. Whether you're a button masher or someone who's memorized every single combo in the series, the game caters to all kinds of players. It's easy to jump in and start throwing punches, but mastering a character, that's where the real fun begins. And speaking of characters, the roster here is incredible. You've got old favorites, some unexpected returns, and a few surprises that will definitely keep you on your toes. Each fighter feels unique, with their own playstyle, moves, and, of course, those iconic fatalities. Seriously, the fatalities in this game are a spectacle. They're gruesome, sure, but they're also so over the top that you can't help but laugh and cringe. It's like a masterclass in creative chaos. But it's not just about fighting, it's about strategy. Mortal Kombat 11 introduces new mechanics like the Fatal Blow and Crushing Blows, which add an extra layer of depth to each match. These aren't just flashy moves, they're game changers that can turn the tide of a fight if used wisely. It's all about timing and knowing when to strike, and it keeps every match feeling fresh and unpredictable. One thing that stands out is how accessible the game feels without sacrificing its complexity. If you're new to the series, the tutorials are super helpful, breaking down everything from basic moves to advanced strategies. Marvel's Spider-Man 2. If you loved the first two games, get ready to have your mind blown, because this sequel takes everything up a notch. It's got all the web-swinging, action-packed, open-world goodness from the first game, but with some seriously awesome upgrades that make you feel even more like Spidey. First off, swinging through New York again? Man, I could do that for hours. The way they've refined the web-swinging mechanics is just so smooth. You're gliding through the city, flipping between skyscrapers, and pulling off crazy mid-air tricks. There's this new web glider thing that lets you cover so much ground so fast. It's like Spidey's flying, and it's the best feeling when you're cruising over Central Park or zipping through tight alleyways. It makes you feel unstoppable, and you'll never want to use fast travel. And this time, you get to switch between Peter and Miles, which is a game changer. Both of them have their own fighting styles and unique abilities, so it never feels repetitive. Peter's got his classic gadgets, but now he's also rocking those symbiote powers that just feel brutal. You can really feel the strength when he's using them. It's like he's just tearing through enemies. And then you've got Miles, who's all about that flashy Venom energy. I loved how you could seamlessly switch between them, depending on the mission or just how you wanted to play. The combat, too, has been seriously upgraded. It's fast, fluid, and makes you feel like you're choreographing these epic battles. Outlast 2. The game is a wild, terrifying ride from start to finish. It takes the creepy factor and dials it up so high you're constantly on edge. If you thought the first Outlast was scary, this one's here to remind you it can always get worse. First off, Outlast 2 does something amazing with its setting. You're dropped into this isolated backwoods area that feels like it's completely detached from the rest of the world. The story has you playing as Blake Langerman, a cameraman looking for answers about a mysterious murder, and, of course, you're not exactly welcomed with open arms. One thing I really love about Outlast 2 is how it forces you to use your camera to survive. You're relying on it for night vision in pitch black areas. But here's the kicker. The battery drains so fast. There's this constant panic about running out of juice. And when you hear something moving in the darkness, that dread just skyrockets. It's a beautiful kind of torture. Honestly, the camera itself feels like a character because you're always thinking about it, babying it, just hoping the battery lasts through the next nightmare. And when the camera dies in a dark place, pure terror. But it's not just about being scared. Outlast 2 does such a great job at making you feel helpless. There's no fighting back, no weapons, no hero moment where you suddenly become this badass. Nope, it's all about running, hiding, and surviving. You have to pick your hiding spots carefully, crouch through cornfields, dive under beds, and hope nobody finds you. Every noise feels like a threat. Bloodborne. It absolutely deserved to win Game of the Year in 2015, but didn't quite get the crown. I mean, this game was From Software at its peak, delivering an intense gothic nightmare of a world that fans still rave about to this day. It's wild to think that something this groundbreaking didn't take home the big award. First off, the atmosphere in Bloodborne? Unreal. Yharnam was this dark, twisted, Victorian city filled with werewolves, cosmic horrors, and nightmare creatures that just kept you on edge the entire time. The design of the world was so hauntingly beautiful, with that classic From Software touch, where every alley and hidden path had a story to tell. The game didn't hold your hand either, which was part of its charm. You had to figure everything out on your own, from the lore to the mechanics. And let's talk about that combat system. Bloodborne took the typical slow, methodical Souls formula and made it fast and aggressive. You couldn't just hang back and wait. The game literally rewarded you for going on the offense with that regain system. If you got hit, you had a window to hit back and regain your health, which encouraged players to stay in the fight instead of running away. It was like Dark Souls on adrenaline. But here's the thing, Bloodborne came out the same year as The Witcher 3, Wild Hunt, and that's where things get tricky. The Witcher 3 swept most of the awards that year, and while it was undoubtedly a great game, a lot of people felt like Bloodborne was overshadowed because of that. But for those who played it, Bloodborne was a masterpiece.